The Syracuse Orange are off to a fantastic recruiting start, but can they start landing the elite recruits like Calvin Russell?
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into the Portal Podcast and a crossover with Locked On Syracuse. We're going to be talking about everything that's going on with that program because they have skyrocketed in recruiting, why it happens, and all the fun stuff that goes along with it. We're going to have a special guest on here in just a minute. And today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. So can Syracuse get the Calvin Russells of the world? Maybe, maybe not. But to find out, let's get my guy on here, Jackson Holzer, Locked On Syracuse. Jackson, how are you today, sir?
I am doing well, Brian. I'm hoping that Syracuse does get Calvin Russell on July 5th.
If they don't, will you cry? Will it be like a very sad day at your place and you just can't leave? Is it going to be that bad or?
No, but I would be disappointed.
Okay.
I guess it's a good thing to be disappointed, though, because if this was just a few years ago, a guy like Calvin Russell would never even consider Syracuse. It wouldn't even be a thought. So at least we're getting ourselves the opportunity to be disappointed.
That's an interesting perspective. Okay, fair enough. Let's break it down here real quick. Overall, they've got 19 commits. They're number 28 in the 24/7 rankings. I think they're 33rd on Rivals. So this is, at least recently, uncharted territory for Syracuse recruiting. They're getting kids out of Florida. They've got 5 O-line commits already. They got 3 D-linemen. They got 5 receivers. They've got a quarterback commit. They got a running back. They've got a balanced class, and they're killing it in the state of Florida. Is any of this surprising to you in any way, shape, or form? I just want to get the overall question out of the way.
No, it's not surprising because ever since Fran Brown has taken over, Syracuse recruiting has gone way up. Now, people might scoff at 28th overall, 33rd on Rivals and say, that's not even that great, right? If you're a fan of some high SEC team like a Georgia, Bama, or even like the lesser SEC teams that are still very high in recruiting, they might stop at 28. But for Syracuse, in the years prior to Fran Brown, they were in the 50s, 60s, 70s in recruiting around the country. I mean, it wasn't really good. I've done a whole podcast breaking it down when you most recently released a list of the best recruiters in the nation. I was like, so here's where Syracuse was before Fran Brown. Then Fran Brown takes over. They're 37th in the nation in recruiting, 42nd in the nation in recruiting, and now they're top 30. So it's been a nice step forward. They went from one of the worst recruiting teams in the nation among schools and power conferences to now they're just middle of the pack.
Right.
They're middle of the pack, which you got to start somewhere, but it all comes down to now, can they actually get the big time recruits and take that next step, which I'm hoping will happen in 2026, but we'll see.
Well, that's the key. And that's what I opened with today on this podcast. It's one thing to get a good class, which they've already established. It's another to get players that when they go out there on 3rd and 4, the entire stadium's watching that player because more than likely he's going to lead you to the football. Defensive lineman, receiver, whatever it is. That's the guy. Do they have the ability, forget Calvin for a second, is there anybody else like an elite player you think they have a chance at besides Calvin? Or are we talking about just like this one player and he's, the stud receiver out of Miami Northwestern? What do you think?
I think he's different. I mean, they're going after other guys. I mean, James Johnson, Hester is a big one that they're going after. But Calvin Russell, if he were to commit to Syracuse, would be quite literally the highest rated Syracuse recruit in over 2 decades. And it wouldn't be particularly, It wouldn't even be particularly close. It's not. You can go check the 24/7 Sports website. You could then cross references to where Calvin Russell ranks around the nation, and you would be able to find it. So he is different. He is someone where if Syracuse were to land a guy like Calvin Russell, that's a statement. They've gotten some really good recruits. I mean, Demetrius Samuel Jr. was a terrific prospect that they got, borderline top 200, consensus 4-star recruit. That's great. a 5-star, that's unheard of for Syracuse football. This is not Syracuse basketball. Syracuse basketball will get 5-star guys. Football hasn't happened in a very long time. So Calvin Russell's different.
That's kind of what I thought you were going to say, but they've got Cameron Wilson in the class, got James Rogers. They got other guys that are highly rated, just not quite as highly as Calvin, but that's still a step up. And just for complete honesty here, nobody really thought they were just going to bust into Florida and take away kids that Miami, Florida, and Florida State wanted, but they have. So from that perspective, it's really hard in any way, shape, or form to deny that Syracuse recruiting is rising. That is just steadfast, no doubt about it, fact. My question for you is, how long can this continue, and can they get to that next step? And that's what we're trying to figure out today, and it's complex. So let's talk a little bit about some of the commitments, some of the guys in the class. You've broken down pretty much everybody on your show, which good job by you for doing that. But I'm kind of looking at their list, going through some of these guys. Like, they got Eshawn Sutton, the athlete I assume will play receiver or DB for Syracuse. He's out of Winter Park, Florida. They've got kids that are like really, really athletic that from all over the country. BJ Garrett, the kid out of Middletown, Delaware. We're not going to hear much about him, but he's a big bodied guy, 6'3". I'm curious, any of these guys to you stand out in a way like this kid should be ranked higher, or do you think everybody's kind of where they should be?
I think everyone's kind of where they should be. They're one of their most, well, first of all, actually a couple of days ago, over the last 48 hours, they've gotten 2 commits. One of them is the number 1 punter in the nation, Jimmy Gregg. I mean, I know it's a punter, but I mean, it's pretty cool. You want to have a good punter because you're going to need a punt at times. And they got another kid and his last name is so great because he's an outside edge rusher. He's a linebacker, Saki. Isn't that terrific? Yeah. He is, so you got to be very careful with highlight tapes. Like I'll just be completely honest. You got to be very careful because they're going to show you all the good of a player. They're not going to show you a guy's weaknesses because it's a highlight tape. It's like if I made a highlight tape, it's only going to be good stuff from me. It's never going to be anything bad. You're never going to hear me stutter on a highlight tape. Are you? I mean, then I just did a poor job of making a highlight. That's the point. It's hard to get a read from a highlight tape, but when I watch Saki, I'm like, he's got track speed. It's on his 24/7 sports profile. And then you watch the highlight tape and you see that, I guess, when he's on, speed rusher. And I think he could be really good at the next level. And I'm surprised because he's rated really highly on 24/7 sports. And let me check it right now for him. He's 82nd at the position in the country for a linebacker. And yet he's not rated on any of the other recruiting sites. I find that fascinating how someone could be rated that highly on one and then not touched on the other ones.
I couldn't tell you, but one of the scouts has probably seen him live. That would be my guess.
I guess what I said on the podcast was now that he's committed to Syracuse, he's going to get a rating from other services because they kind of have to rate him. He's committed to a power conference school. That's kind of your job at this point. Well, not your job specifically, but you get my idea.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Do you think the class at this point, for the average fan, has exceeded expectations at this juncture?
For the average Syracuse fan or in general?
Syracuse.
I think it's trying to met expectations because the expectations have been raised, and rightfully so. It's one of those things. This is going to be the 3rd recruiting class under Fran Brown, 2026. So I say this in a very nice way. To me, with recruiting in Fran Brown, it's almost like the honeymoon phase is over with it. It's like, okay, we've established what Fran Brown can do. Now it's about, can he continue this recruiting trail and can he get even better? Because it's now year 3, 2026. So again, I'm saying that in a very nice way. I don't mean to like threaten like, oh, I'm not happy with Fran Brown. It's more of like, he's meeting my expectations. I expect Syracuse now to be a very solid recruiting team in football. It's just the next step. What's the next step? It's hopefully getting a guy like Calvin Russell.
My question for you next, and we're going to be talking about some of the visits they got coming up, all the guys that they're trying to get, commitment dates, the next 2 to 3 weeks. How many guys does Jackson think there's going to be a chance for them to get a commitment with? That is next here on this crossover, Locked on the Portal and Locked on Syracuse. There's nothing like the NBA playoffs, the intensity, the buzzer beaters, and the fans losing their minds. It's the kind of atmosphere you must experience live, and this year's matchup between the Pacers and the Thunder has been great in the NBA Finals. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get seats if you want to check it out, even for the biggest games like the NBA Finals. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off draws near, and with killer last-minute deals, panoramic seat views, and no surprise fees, Game Time is a total game changer. If you want to check out that game, there's 3 more. Next one is going to be in OKC. Then they're going to go back to Indianapolis, and if there needs to be, there will be another one in OKC. We'll see how that goes, but the NBA Finals, you can get there for a little bit less with Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, it's official visit season. Syracuse is absolutely in position to improve themselves. I was looking at their list before the show started. Is there anybody coming up for a visit that you're excited about, concerned about, or if you want to approach it from this perspective, positionally, like, again, they've got 5 O-line commits, 3 D-line, and 5 receivers. That's a heck of a start at those spots. Anywhere they're probably needing to fill gaps more than other spots positionally?
I think, like you said, the class is really balanced.
Yeah, I do too.
They can kind of pick whatever they want. I mean, they only have 1 quarterback commit. I'm not sure if they're going to only have 1, so you might say maybe you want 2. Last year they took 2, Luke Carney and Rich Bellin, so maybe they decide to go that route again, but they're balanced. I don't think there's any one particular position that you're like, they need. Maybe a tight end. Maybe. Okay. I mean, we can mention a guy like Julius Miles here. I mean, he's posting Syracuse gear on social media, but I don't know if he's a tight end or if he's a wide receiver, to be honest with you. I mean, his 24/7 sports profile kind of contradicts itself. It says he's a tight end and a wide receiver. So maybe someone like that.
Yeah, he's a North Florida kid from the Panhandle. He's a really good basketball player too, like really good. So that'd be interesting. He might play both sports. He's a go get it and dunk on you kind of guy. So, okay, they've got a couple of visits, and I was curious if you were going to mention a certain player. Florida State has a commitment from Tadarius Hughes, but he's visiting Syracuse this upcoming weekend. I've said on Locked On Seminoles, the other show that I run here on the Locked On Podcast Network, to me, if you just talked about talent and with the current commitments, I would take Hughes over anybody else, just raw talent. 6'2", 180 pounds, give or take, really athletic, plays at Miami Northwestern. He's that safety in the back end of your defense that erases things. What are you hearing about him? Because recently he posted a just random picture of himself wearing Syracuse gear on X. What are you hearing?
With Tadarius Hughes specifically, I have to double check with Mike McAllister. He's the Syracuse 24/7 Sports Insider. I had him on recently. He might have told me in that podcast, and it was like a couple of weeks ago, that I don't know if he's visiting anymore, and 24/7 Sports just hasn't corrected it. So I do have to double check with that. My guess is that if he is visiting, that he's definitely open to Syracuse. But if he's not visiting, then I think he's probably going to stay in state and stick with Florida State. I mean, I hope they get him. He would be one of the better recruits in the class. So yeah, I'm hopeful.
It's just odd when I was scrolling this week or two ago and he had the Syracuse stuff on. I'm like, that is really random. Just a photo, hanging out in Syracuse gear.
Does that look like someone who's fully bought in? I mean, maybe he is, and he's just doing it for attention. I don't know.
As of a couple weeks ago, Florida State had 9 commits. 7 of them were taking visits at that time. That's not where you want to be. I'm just going to throw that out there. But here's the other thing. They don't have a bunch more visits. They've lined up pretty much everything they've needed. This past week was a big one for Syracuse in terms of figuring out who was coming, who they were going to bring in. But the June 16th, they got Samaj Beals, Jalen Carter, and some of these other guys that are listed. How many made it to campus? I don't know. But it's kids from all over the place. New Jersey, there's quite a few of those. Of course, Fran Brown, for those that don't know, is from New Jersey. So that's a big deal to him. But they got a bunch of kids that aren't really ranked, but they're all over the East Coast. He's focused a little bit more on the East Coast, the back half of this. Beginning, though, like the June 13th weekend, this past weekend, Javion Cooper, Jarius Rogers, other kids from Florida, he had all of them in. Do you think it matters to him about the East Coast of where the kids come from, or does he not care?
Well, they got a corner from California, Jackson Gates. And I'm always careful with those West Coast commits because it's a big deal going from coast to coast. It's one thing to convince a kid from Florida to come up to Syracuse. I mean, it's really not that much of a convincing, to be honest. It's a 3-hour flight, give or take, and there's no time zone difference. West Coast to East Coast, it's a 3-hour time difference, and you're flying 6-7 hours across the country. And there's plenty of great schools on the West Coast. And Jackson Gates was taking a lot of visits to other West Coast schools. I mean, Utah was involved, BYU was involved. But one thing that was really smart with what Syracuse did, and I'm sure it's not by accident, is on their most recent official visit weekend, they had a lot of their current verbal commits on campus together, including Jackson Gates, including a guy like Cameron Wilson. I really want to keep Cameron Wilson. Cameron Wilson's on flip watch. John Garcia is out here saying, hey, Nebraska, they're trying to flip him. They're going hard for him. On-3 Steve Wiltfong already logged a prediction for it to happen.
Not a good sign for you.
Not a good sign, but that was before he was officially visiting Syracuse again. So they got him back on campus before he decommitted, and then he just recently told our 24/7 Sports insider, Mike McAllister, that he's 100% locked in with Syracuse. I guess time will tell, but it's not an accident that a lot of their guys that are particularly highly rated, I mean, Javion Cooper, Cameron Wilson, Jackson Gates, and Jarius Rogers, all Syracuse verbal commits, all have maybe the possibility of flipping because, you know, these other schools aren't just going to look at Syracuse and say, oh, he's committed to Syracuse, let's div up, because let's be honest, it doesn't matter the program you are. Nobody is going to stop recruiting until you put pen to paper. Even when you actually put pen to paper, they do not stop nowadays, right? So they had them all on campus together. And I think that was really important for Syracuse because it's one thing to take the next step and hopefully get a guy like Calvin Russell or a CJ Hester or any other Tadarius Hughes, any of those guys, right? You got to keep what you already have.
Yes.
If you can keep what you already have, right now it's a top 30 class in the country. If you do nothing else, it's probably going to end up top 40, top 45 if you just do nothing else and you just keep your guys. So it's very, very important that Syracuse does that.
I think that's a fair point because Syracuse is sitting in the catbird seat here. They don't have to be just dominant down the stretch. They got to hold serve with the guys that you just mentioned, their commitments. If they could add 3-4 more really good players just between now, they got like 5.5 months to do this. Just 3-4 more guys, probably a top 25 class. So
right, exactly.
I think they would be wise to, continue this pace, but at the same time, don't take kids just to take them. They just need to be smart about it.
And if I also may add, the verbal commitments with Syracuse do matter. Under Fran Brown, if you're excluding 2024 because that's a new coach and there was a lot of decommits and a lot of commits because of the new coach, if you count the 2025 and 2026 class, the ratio of a commit to a decommit is about 8-1. That means for every 8 players essentially that commit to Syracuse under Fran Brown in the 2025 and 2026 class, for every 8 guys, only 1 decommits. So all that is to say, a verbal commitment with Syracuse football does matter. Now, with some other schools, they can get verbal commits and the next day they're flipping. They're going elsewhere. There's programs like that around the country. With Syracuse, typically, when they get a guy, they don't usually lose him.
Well, that tells you a lot right there. When we come back, I want to discuss a little bit of what's ahead for Syracuse this season. How is that going to impact their recruiting class? That's next here in this crossover Locked On the Portal and Locked On Syracuse. Thank you once again for making the Portal Podcast your first listen or Locked On Syracuse. We truly appreciate it. And thank you to Jackson Holzer for stopping in to do this crossover today. Jackson, let's talk a little bit about the ridiculous nature of the 25 schedule for Syracuse and whether or not you think that could impact their recruiting class. I have learned the hard way that recruits have very short memories. If Tennessee comes out and beats Syracuse 31-10, do you think that's going to matter? Or if they start 3-5 or whatever, because their schedule, but you've talked about it on your show, is hard. They just caught the wrong end of the deal this year. Just the way the conference schedule fell. And again, they open. Where's that game at against Tennessee? Is it Charlotte? Atlanta. Okay. Not exactly a home field advantage for the Syracuse Orange.
Nope.
It's about 3 hours.
There will be a lot of orange in the building.
Yeah. A different kind. It'll be checkered, but it will not be the one for Syracuse. Do you think it's going to matter much with the way that they're recruiting if they start poorly or if they have they're not winning 10 games this year? I think that's pretty safe to say. Where do you think that's going to impact them, if at all? Is there any particular player, but it's not going to matter at all?
That is a great question. Fran Brown is really open and honest with recruits. That we do know. He's very blunt, very straightforward. He's not going to sit here and tell you how you're the next great thing and how, you come to Syracuse, you're going to be a 4-time All-American, go to the NFL and go to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He's very honest with you. He lays it year by year. And I'm sure that includes expectations for this upcoming season. At least I hope. My hope is that, these recruits understand that if this season doesn't necessarily go Syracuse's way, and I'm not sitting here saying that it will or won't, but that the recruits will understand that Fran Brown has already spoken to them and say, hey, look, we're building a really good program. You saw what we did last year. Now this year, unfortunately, our schedule is just much harder, so we might not have the same record here. Are you committed to sticking with us? Do you understand that when you are committing to Syracuse, that it may not be the greatest 2025 season, but here's the good news, Cameron Wilson or Jarius Rogers, you're not coming here until 2026 anyway, so what difference does it make to you? The point is that as long as that I'm here and that the coaching staff is here and your position coaches are here, if you trust us, we can develop you and be a really good team.
I think that's a fair statement. You have to pitch the future to guys when A, they're committed, or B, they're close. You can be the player that gets us over the top. Especially they can pitch that if the season is rocky, which again, they've got Clemson on the road. Do they got Miami on the road? Who is it?
Miami on the road, at SMU, at Georgia Tech, at Notre Dame. It's a tough schedule. It is. I'll be honest with all the Syracuse fans here. It is a very difficult schedule. Last year, Georgia Tech was with all due respect to Georgia Tech, it was probably our second or third toughest game. This year, it's our fifth, maybe sixth. To be honest, there's a lot of really good teams. If they can go 7-5, I think that's a win. Especially if they get really good quarterback play and their offense looks the same or similar to last year, where they're scoring a lot, they're throwing the ball for a lot of yards. I think that would particularly help with offense recruits because they would sit there and say, hey, that's a system I like. I'm going to be able to put up numbers. I'm going to look good. I'm going to get an opportunity, and that's going to help with NFL.
I would agree with all those things. I would absolutely agree. Jackson, I'm going to get you out of here on this. Take Calvin Russell completely out of that. That's the easy, low-hanging fruit. If you could pick a recruit, I know that's who you would pick because that's obvious. If you took Calvin off the board, which recruit would you want Syracuse to get that's got a visit or has visited, and why?
I'm not going to say him because it would be cheating, but it would be Messiah Hampton if they can flip him from Oregon, but I don't necessarily think that's going to happen. I'll go with CJ Hester.
Okay. DB out of Cocoa High School. Yeah.
Another Florida DB, a blue chip type prospect. And I think he's only going to get better. That's the guy. And I think with Fran Brown being a DB's coach, that's helped him, particularly with DBs.
Who all is he still looking at? I know he's been offered by. just about everybody. Syracuse, Florida, there's a handful of other schools. Like if you just get a kid over Florida, like Cocoa kids are expected to go to UF. I can just tell you that from personal experience. Like who's left on that recruitment board? That could be a big boom for Syracuse.
I agree. That's why I really want him.
Okay.
Well, I think, didn't Demetrius Samuel go to Cocoa?
He might have.
Because if he, I think he did. Or he went to Palm Bay.
That's the same area. Same area, right down the road.
Right. Regardless. But they took him from Florida.
Well, that area, all along that coast, every school's got somebody. And they've kind of made their mark. So, like, Jarius Rogers is from Fleming Island. That's right down the road from Jacksonville. But yet they've got kids from South Florida, too, that are committed, like Cameron Wilson's from Miami.
Right.
So it's
Rogers is also very interesting because he's been committed to Syracuse since late January. And I'm not saying he's going to flip his commitment or anything like that because you never really know. But there has been really no buzz with him flipping. It's been like 100% so far locked in with Syracuse. I mean, I think he's taken one other official visit, and it was UCF, and that's it. I mean, is it because other schools in Florida, like the big ones, the other big ones, I should say, aren't going after him, or is it because he is so locked into Syracuse it doesn't matter?
Well, I'm sure that you're happy regardless that UCF.
I don't care.
Yeah, it's if he doesn't visit UF, Miami, or Florida State officially, I doubt that he ends up flipping away from the Syracuse Orange. Just my take, but that's how I see it. Jackson, tell everybody where they can find your work.
Sure. On Twitter at LO_Syracuse. Also, my personal Twitter is at JacksonH_52. And also, Locked On Syracuse is free and available wherever you get your podcasts, on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. It is free.
Absolutely. You can find the Portal Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Podbean, or wherever you get your pods. We'll see you again soon.